Hello everybody, welcome back, doing another modern deck tech.
Magic!
Indeed. And this is a Patreon deck that was submitted to us by Shadow Ultd, who's sent us many things in the past, including a version of this deck that ran white. I believe it was Draconic Blinkburn, and this one is Draconic Flickerburn. So it's a dragon-themed deck, of course, utilizing Dragon Tempest primarily, along with some flicker-type effects to keep the triggers rolling. So we'll start at once. We have 3 copies of Slumbering Dragon. It's a 1-mana 3/3 with flying. Whenever a creature attacks you, it gets a +1/+1 counter, and it can't attack or block unless you have 5 +1/+1 counters on it.
So he's a very sleepy boy, but once you wake him up, he's very angry.
And he kills in like 3 hits. Although by that point in the game, maybe even like 1 hit. It's crazy card. A lot of fun. Then we have 2 copies of... I just realized there's a lot of foreign versions of cards in this deck.
Yes.
I believe Shapesharer is his name. Yes. So it's a 2-mana 1/1 changeling, which of course makes it a dragon. And you can pay 2 and a blue to have it essentially become a copy of another creature on the battlefield till end of turn, I believe. But you can do that, of course, on your opponent's turn, make a cool blocker, and you can do it on your turn, make a cool attacker. Good stuff. Our next 2 drop, a new one. So this is actually Sprite Dragon, but the versions that we have are the Godzilla version, so it's Dorat, the Perfect Pet. So it's a 2-mana 1/1 flying in haste fairy dragon. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, it gets a +1/+1 counter. Which, there's a few non-creature spells in this list, as we will get to. So then, sort of a weird order, but at 5 here we have Scourge of Valkas. So it's a 5-mana 4/4 with flying. Whenever it or another dragon enters the battlefield, it deals X damage to any target, where X is the number of dragons you control. And it has fire breathing, so pretty solid. It's like Dragon Tempest copies 5 and 6.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah, it's expensive. And then I guess I'll just do this too. 2 lightning bolts, because it's a red deck.
It's a red deck, and if you didn't have lightning bolts, something's gone horribly wrong.
Exactly. Though, there is an argument to be made that the dragon 3 damage spell is a little better.
Yes, that could be the case in this list, since you're not running the full 4. You could...
so 2 of those.
You missed the 4-drop dragons.
Oh, I did. You're right. So at 4, we have Thunderbreak Regent. Very pretty card. 4-mana 4/4. Whenever a dragon you control becomes the target of a spell or ability, it deals 3 damage to that player.
Isn't it an opponent controls?
Yes.
Yes, so
specifically.
This protects your creatures by bolting anything that they try and target, which is very handy.
Then we go on to Lords and Hordes. So we have 4 Metallic Mimic. It's a 2/1. Whenever it enters the battlefield, you choose a creature type. So you of course pick dragon, and it enters as a dragon. And then whenever a creature of that type enters the battlefield, it enters with a +1/+1 counter, which has a fun little synergy with this. Just makes it a little
bit faster.
Faster to go off, and makes it bolt proof, which is convenient. It's mainly in there because it's a 2-mana Dragon Lord. Then we have a 3-mana Dragon Lord, Adaptive Automaton. Same sort of deal. It just gives +1/+1 instead.
Yes, so this one's not as permanent,
yes,
but can come in later to pump creatures up.
Yeah, top decking a Metallic Mimic is pretty bad when you've already played out your hand. But this guy, always good. Then we have Dragon's Horde, 3 copies of that. So whenever dragon enters the battlefield under your control, you get a gold counter placed on it. You can tap to remove a gold counter from it to draw a card, or you can just tap it to add 1 mana of any color, which is convenient because it lets you go for a Scourge on turn 4, which is kind of nice. But yeah, just generally
being able to
pretty
slowly draw cards as you cast all your dragons is quite handy.
Yeah, and another interesting thing about that too is it doesn't say whenever you cast a dragon, it's whenever one enters the battlefield. So a ghostly flicker on your board can load this thing up real fast. Yeah. Then we have 2 copies of the Ozolith. So whenever a creature you control leaves the battlefield, if it had counters on it, you put 3 counters on the Ozolith, And then at the beginning of combat on your turn, if the Ozolith had any counters on it, you can move them from Ozolith to any creature. So, a lot of words on that, but kind of handy with Dorat the Perfect Pet, Metallic Mimic, giving single +1/+1 counters to things.
Yes.
When those things die, you can load up this Ozolith and then Slumbering Dragon out of nowhere, which is pretty good. Not quite out of nowhere, but
Not quite, yeah. They'll
close.
see it coming, but
yeah.
I mean, still suddenly.
Unless you have a Dragon Tempest, which is the next card here. So this is sort of the cornerstone of the deck. Whenever a creature with flying enters the battlefield under your control, it gains haste. So that's why, of course, mean that if you have a Dragon Tempest in play, you can, like, 1 mana, play this, move the counters onto it for combat.
Surprise.
Yeah, so that part's fine. But the really spicy part is whenever a dragon enters the battlefield under your control, it deals X damage to target creature or player, where X is the number of dragons you control. So this, of course, deck filled with tiny dragons to abuse this card, and flicker spells.
And flicker spells, which also abuse that.
So we have 2 Teferi's Time Twist. It's 2 mana instant. Exile target permanent you control. Return that card to the battlefield under under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. If it enters the battlefield as a creature, then it gets a +1/+1 counter on it, which is very nice for the dragon and some of these other things that are in here. And then we have 4 copies of Ghostly Flicker. It essentially flickers 2 target artifacts, creatures, or lands. And yeah, that's pretty good. Double dragon triggers. Nice. And you can also sort of use it to save things. Same with Teferi's Time Twist, because it is a permanent.
And if you have this out, then they still take the 3 damage and you save your creature. So
Good stuff. So then we go to lands. Pretty straightforward stuff here. We have 3 Spire Bluff Canals, 3 Steam Vents, 2 Sulphur Falls, 2 Crucible of... or is that Haven? Haven of the Spirit Dragon?
I think that's Haven.
Haven, yeah.
I believe that's
Haven of the Spirit Dragon.
Yeah, Haven of the Spirit Dragon.
I know what it does, though. So it taps for 1 colorless mana or 1 mana of any color to only cast a dragon spell. Or you can pay 2 and tap and sacrifice that land in order to get a dragon back from your graveyard to your hand. Which, if you have nothing else going on and you're a little flooded in the end game, getting back one of these or one of these, pretty solid. Then we have 2 Mutavaults, which is an honorary dragon, of course. You can do some sort of shenanigans with Dragon Tempest and Mutavault, just getting an extra dragon counted.
Yes, but that's basically the...
Yeah.
He doesn't do too much with the +1/+1 counters or anything, because he never enters as a creature.
No. Always as a land.
Sometimes I suppose you could, with the attack trigger, move a bunch with the
it's true.
Ozolith, if that's what you have to end with.
Yeah, actually, that's a good point. If they wipe your board and your board had a bunch of counters on it, there you go.
Yes, you still do have that creature hiding away.
I think I said Sulphur Falls already, so we're going to go for 7 mountains and 3 islands to round out the deck. That is Draconic Flickerburn. Thank you, Shadow Unlimited, for this deck, and we'll see you tomorrow.